Okay, very nice. John, so can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, so tell me where you think I'm wrong.
You're not wrong. Hold on. I gotta get to the other. Because StreamYard is the live feed, and here's the pop out chat. All right. My thing. Hello, everybody. Theodore. I love you as a guy, man. I love your show. I'm a
Thank you.
subscriber to your channel.
Thank you.
No hard feelings, my friend.
No, 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 I
Anybody in
understand.
the chat. Yeah. Um, I just don't think that anyone can blame anybody's profession for their actions. Just like you can't blame a cop, you can't blame a teacher, even though they're acting in that degree. So what I say is that the people who are actually committing the act are uh, the internal feelings they have. So if a man looks in the mirror and he sees a man, and then he goes out and desires a child or another man, that carnal thought is what we should be blaming, not the actual priesthood, because the
Okay.
priesthood is a wonderful thing. I mean, I went to Catholic school, okay, not high school Catholic school, and none of my friends were ever bothered. I was a choir boy. I'm not a diehard Catholic. I don't go to church all the time. Probably haven't been in church in years, but common sense will tell you that. You know, hey. But common sense will tell you that it's not the actual person who's wearing the uniform who's committing the act. Like no one ordered that priest to go out and hurt anybody. It's like going to saying to someone, "Oh, they ordered me to kill 1,000 people, but I did it anyway." Even though you knew it was wrong, or even though you knew your life was on the line. But no one ever that priest didn't go to 8 years of seminary to learn how to molest children.
No, no, no. So I'm not saying that the priesthood, and I've never said this, that the priesthood unto itself, like the concept of the priesthood isn't bad. The very concept in its essence is not bad, right? Just like like you said, the profession of a cop is not bad. But what I am saying, and this is the very obvious thing that everybody has heard of, is that there are very powerful people who are priests who cover these things up.
Right, because they themselves are the accusers. They themselves are acting in that carnal thought. They're not acting in like when a priest is performing mass, he's not molesting children. When a priest is hearing confession, he's doing it on his own time.
Okay, but
And
when a
I'm sure a
priest,
lot of these priests that do, excuse me, they're not even wearing their priest garments. They go outside. And I also believe that a lot of these accusations made against a lot of these priests were false. I mean, you could argue with me about that. Like a lot of these like priests that were retiring and they were bishops and they made these confessions were probably all false because a lot of the priests that
they're
were
all false.
not all of them. Not all of them, but I'm
I
saying like
think
a lot of
no.
them, a lot of the priests that were accused were dead. If you do the math
So
and you look up, a lot of them were dead. So like I can go blame a dead guy and then sue the church for billions of dollars. The church paid out about $10 billion in lawsuits.
so
10 billion. So now if the church didn't have all that money that people would know, like these lawyers could make these class action suits and sue
so
people,
then
they wouldn't do it. Like the Greek Orthodox, the Eastern Orthodox, or any Orthodox church, or Protestant churches, small little churches, they don't get sued because there's no money there.
why is there so many cover-ups though? Why do they cover up for all these different priests? Why were they covering up for all these priests for all these years, for all these decades?
Well, because the sinners will cover the sinners.
So
I
then
mean,
there is definitely evil in the priesthood.
it's not in the priesthood; it's the people. See, what
But they're
happens too is,
priests.
all right.
But
So
they're
you
priests.
right. So let's take for example Martin Luther, the guy who nailed his demands on the wall on the door of the church. We know who he is, right? Protestant Reformation. I mean, who really like backed that guy? If you think about it, the media.
But he
What?
left the Catholic Church. He wasn't a monk anymore. He
Not right
left the whole
away.
thing. He started his own church. We're not talking about some guy who's a schismatic and he starts his own church. We're talking about people. I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example. In the San Antonio Archdiocese, this happened recently. There was a priest named, he wasn't a priest, he was a deacon, Deacon Orr, who raped children. He sexually molested several children in the Catholic school. One of the, I believe one or several of the victims was actually in the Catholic school itself. And Father Christopher Phillips covered up for it. He covered up for it for all of those years. So the priest who molests children, look at the Polish sex scandal. It's not even a sex scandal. Look at the molestation scandal that took place in Poland. All of these children, young people, young girls, raped by priests, and nothing happened to them. Mexico, the same thing happened. There's a video that you can watch. There was an institution for the blind in Italy. Young blind children, Catholic school just for blind kids, blind and kids who were mute, who couldn't talk clearly, and they had very strong speech impediments. And there was a priest. I can show you the video. He's talking. There's an undercover camera. He doesn't know there's a camera, and he is laughing, talking about how and he's giving names of all the priests. Oh yeah, he liked to touch the kids' penises and the balls. He liked to touch them. He's laughing about it. Undercover camera. What happened to any of these people? Are they behind bars? Why hasn't the Catholic Church reported Father Christopher Phillips to the police for covering up a crime?
Well, some priests did go to jail for their actions. When they
as they should, but look at the situations when they were put in prison. Why did the Catholic Church work with law enforcement? Because they had to. They're pressured to do so. But because there's so many cases where they don't work with law enforcement, like for example, there was the situation in Chicago where there was a priest who was looking at child pornography, and he was running this program. I forget the name of it, but it was something in Spanish. He was covering this program. He was running this program where they were streamlining in young men from Mexico to become priests. Turned out that a lot of these kids were homosexual themselves. They were young homosexuals who wanted to join the priesthood, and they were streamlining all of this. And it just so happens that the guy who directed the whole thing owned child pornography. And there was a priest and there was a layman who discovered his computer. The priest found the computer. There was child porn playing on the computer. Guess who went to the authorities?
Who?
The layperson did, not the priest.
Okay, I mean, if you want to, if you can say that the church didn't do it, the church took responsibility. They paid billions of dollars in restitution.
It's not all about money.
They admitted it.
It's not all about money. Oh, so they admitted it. So but by your own admission, then they may have this problem.
It's a problem that's created. The church does not form child molesters. The church ordains priests.
Sure as hell ordains them.
So what happened? But listen, if you're a homosexual and you want to become a priest, right? And then you say, I'm gonna live a life of celibacy, right? Now, we are forgiving people. We are understanding people. So if the guy goes through the priesthood and he follows through and all of that, and then he gets ordained, and then in time, he starts getting these mental, because I believe that homosexuality is a mental disorder. I don't think it's a normal, fashionable thing. It's psychological problems that people have. It's also a way of retaliating against other things. So these people actually go into a priesthood where they see an order. The Catholic Church is an order, right? We have the heavens, we have the church, we have the pope, we have the bishops. It's an order. It goes all the way down to the priest. So it's an order. And there are a lot of people out there that want to disrupt order, just like we've been seeing with Black Lives Matter, Antifa. They want to disrupt the order of society. And these people are psychotic. So you can't. So I will never blame the priesthood that I respect, and that I feel that priests are wonderful people. There's so many priests out there that are just fantastic. fantastic people. I mean,
So
they're
you're
just great. And
okay.
then there are people that are bad people. But
I've
it's
heard
not
all
the
this.
priest doing
Okay,
it's the
I've heard all this
carnal
stuff.
desires.
I've heard all this stuff about priests being fantastic people, and then they ended up being predators. So what I hear, for example, all these years about when I've heard all these years about the church being this institution founded by Jesus Christ,
It is.
that is an extremely, extremely remarkable statement to make. And when you make that statement that it was founded by Jesus Christ, then it better be an institution that fights for justice and mercy. And when you have a Catholic Church that has covered up for literally thousands upon thousands of sexual predators for decades, then it's very difficult to convince people that you're an institution founded by Jesus Christ. Another thing that I want to say is if somebody were to tell you, hey, John, don't go to this neighborhood because there's a lot of cartel violence in this place. And you're like, well, I don't believe that because there's great people in this town. There's amazing people in this town. And then you go to this town and you're like, you're walking around and then all of a sudden you get mugged. You're like, well, it happened only one time. And then you're still there. You still continue there. You still continue to live there. And then all of a sudden you get mugged again. And then you get mugged the third time. You're like, man, there's something wrong with this place if I'm getting mugged within 2 years. When I joined the Catholic Church in 2013, literally the first year I was there was a priest who preyed upon me. John Kinsel. Robert L. Kinsel. Not John. Robert L. Kinsel. Second year I was there, Yarbrough, another predator, who admitted to touching a young man inappropriately. And he wanted to do the same thing to me, but believe me, I wouldn't let him. Doing the same thing. Third time it happened. Then there was a fourth priest that I met. Who ended up being who it turned out was covering up for a real pedophile, a convicted pedophile, almost convicted pedophile, named Deacon Orr, who literally molested children, and Phillips was covering up for him for years. And this was eventually revealed to the public. So if someone says, Ted, don't go into this town because you're going to get mugged or there's a lot of crime there, it's like, and this happens 3, 4, 5 times, like, man, there really is a problem going on. Well, why can't we make that same sort of why can we apply that same sort of logic and that common sense to the Catholic Church? I just don't see why not.
Well, because what we're doing is we're shaming the priest. We're not shaming the homosexual.
We're shaming people who aren't doing their job, who don't care. That's a huge that there's nothing wrong with that.
Right, but
if you're in the military, and were you ever in the military?
Yes, I was.
I can tell by the way you talk. If there was this problem in the military, don't you think it should be fixed? Would you say, well, I don't think you would say, well, you're shaming the military or you're shaming the authorities of the military or the superiors. I would say that you, being someone who believes in morals, you would be saying, hey, this needs to be done. And they should be shamed if they're covering up for this.
Right, but what I was saying about Martin Luther is that the way Martin Luther's message got out to the peasants, because the peasants were the ones who uprised, rather than uprising against the landowners and the people that are oppressing them, right? The media took it upon themselves that the printing press was coming about. They were printing papers, people buying newspapers. They took it upon themselves to blame the church for lies about whatever the guy was lying about, and it wasn't true. So they started this whole reformation. So it's the same thing with this. So now the media, rather than saying a homosexual molested a child, and showed him not wearing his havoc or his collar, but wearing Nike clothes, right? Showing that, because the man himself is the one who committed the act. The priest didn't commit the act as a priest. He was just wearing priestly clothes. People impersonate people and commit crimes. That's what I'm saying. So like the media blamed the act of the homosexual act itself. Like saying a homosexual molested a child. A pedophile molested a girl. Because this priest have molested little girls too. They're not gay. So they go after young girls or girls and whatever, which I agree. So that's my thing, is that what they should do is they should blame the act, because it's the homosexual desire, carnal feelings that wants to have sex with another man or a boy. The priest was never taught to do that. The
If a
church
police, okay,
recruits priests. They don't recruit homosexuals to
if a
act
police,
upon.
they do recruit homosexuals because many times they know that the priest, the seminarians are homosexual when they appoint them.
Right, but then they take a vow of celibacy. So we have to take their word for it.
No, 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 no. I'm sorry. That's they see. I don't see how that is even okay. There are different things that I want to say in response to what you said here. Just to respond to the
I have
last
to
thing
go
that you
after
said.
this.
Okay.
I'm
Just to
sorry.
respond to the last thing that you said that they make a vow of celibacy. In the Old Testament, there is a verse that talks about sodomites becoming priests, and God looks down on this. And then some righteous king, I think it was King Hezekiah, came over and got rid of all, killed them all, actually. So, uh,
Sodom and
appointing
Gomorrah.
homosexual priests, as long as they make a vow of celibacy, that is not a valid answer, nor is it a valid action to make.
Well, I'm just looking at it as I'm just saying that as a layperson. I really
Okay.
don't know exactly what it is to become a priest.
Okay.
I'm just
Secondly,
saying they take a vow of celibacy, so that may,
okay,
you know, that
gotcha.
may make the church feel better.
So I know you got to go, so I just want to make this one last response to you. So another thing also is when you say, well, they need to blame the act. If a police officer is walking around with his uniform, and people say, and some woman says, "Help me, officer, help me," and the officer says, "Oh, I'll help you," and puts her in the police car and then rapes her, I would say we should definitely mention the fact that he's a police officer and he was using his uniform and his position as a way to take advantage of somebody and abuse the trust of another human being.
But
If we do not maintain the integrity of these titles and of these uniforms, like the badge or like the lapel, then guess what that causes? It causes mistrust for these institutions, and you diminish the cohesiveness of society. So the type of argumentation that you're utilizing here is actually very dangerous for society because it ruins the cohesiveness of society. Because people lose trust in the Catholic Church, then people turn to atheism, people turn to cults, they turn to heresy. Another thing that I want to also say is the fact that they utilized their lapel to take advantage of somebody means we should definitely mention the fact that they are priests. Because in all these cases, it's the priest and a victim. Like in Poland, like in Italy, like in the United States, like in Mexico, Argentina, it doesn't matter. All these things are happening. Look at the Buffalo, New York sex scandal case. Dozens of priests. Dozens of priests.
You're agreeing with the fact that all white people, that in reality, you know, where all white people are systemically racist. Because
Wait, what? I don't know what. Hold on. I'm trying to get your
because
point of logic here isn't making sense. What do you mean white people are systemically racist?
No, by you saying that we should call out all cops.
No.
all
No.
priests,
I'm
say
not
that-
saying
well,
we should
that's
call
what
out
you're
all
doing.
cops.
Well,
I'm
that's
saying
what happens.
I'm
If
saying
you
that if
say, But
okay.
that's what happens. If
No.
you say that a
No,
cop
no.
molested a child, people are going to look at cops and say, well, that guy could be a child molester.
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm simply making a parallel situation
Right.
to help better
Yeah.
to help underline what I'm trying to say, to help amplify what I'm trying to say, to give
But
people a
that
better
parallel
perspective.
is the
Look
same
outside
as-
of the Catholic Church here for a second. If a cop utilized his uniform to take advantage of the trust of another human being, that cop is abusing his position. And if the police department is covering up for him, then that indicates corruption on the part of the police department itself. The same type of thing is happening. I'm not saying this is happening. What I would argue is that the situation in the Catholic Church is far worse than any corruption in the police force. That's what I would argue. But I'm simply using that as an analogy to bring a better perspective to what I'm trying to say, and that is that abusing your lapel, abusing your uniform, abusing the trust of the lay people, that is evil. And to say, well, they're not doing it as priests, they are, because the victim is made a victim in the circumstances in which that person is putting trust in the priesthood.
But
Do you
they're
see what
not-
I'm trying to say?
But when they're doing that, they're not acting as a priest. You can't. It's like sociology, like Carl Jung. He blames society for the actions of a few who can't function in society. So he blames the entire society. Just
Okay.
like they're doing now, like with this whole woke thing. They want to blame everybody in society because some people can't go up and get a job. So it's everybody's fault. And we have to pay them and we have to coddle them.
That's a different subject. But
But it's almost the same thing. You're paralleling. So if you could say slave owners own slaves, now all white people are systemic racists. Like we're born racists.
That's
What
not
you're saying.
even
It's
that's
the
not
same thing.
even
So
in
every
comparison to
priest
what I'm saying.
has a possibility of becoming a
That's not even
pedophile.
that's
If
not a
you
legitimate comparison. What I'm trying to point out to you is the absolute corruption within the Catholic Church that is extremely cancerous. And when they abuse their position as priest, they are to say, okay, if you're going to say, well, they're not acting as priests when they're doing that, okay, fine, they're not doing what priests should be doing. So then, should we
Right.
fire that priest?
the person, we should fire that person.
Why?
The person's being fired, but he wasn't acting. He was wearing priestly clothes. That doesn't make him acting as a priest. That's not.
Why should he be fired if he wasn't a priest when he was doing the evil?
But well, everybody does that. I mean, that's just the way it is. The guy gets a job, and he acts in an inappropriate way, and he gets fired, regardless of what his profession is.
Because he was doing evil.
Even as a politician, what are you gonna say? I mean, that was his
Right,
job.
but I'm simply taking your logic here, and I'm trying to apply it to this argument here. You're saying that they weren't acting as priests, but then why fire them if they weren't priests when they were doing the evil?
That was just their profession. They're gonna go to trial not as a priest. They're gonna say you are going to jail because you're
No,
a priest.
but
you're going to jail because you molested as a homosexual or as a pedophile a person. When they go to court, they're not wearing priestly clothes. They're wearing jumpsuits. They're in handcuffs. They're not priests anymore.
But you're deflecting though. You're deflecting from the argument.
Deflecting.
You're deflecting
Anyway.
from it because you're saying, well, it happened. You're trying to generalize everything, because the argument that you're hinging the point that you're hinging your argument upon is that they're not priests when they're doing it. That's what your point is. So if that is your point, then why should they be fired?
What I'm saying is their carnal desires is not a priestly desire.
But it's not just the carnal desires; it's the entire system that's covering up for them.
Because I mean, but you can't blame the church. The church is an organization.
I will blame the church. What are you talking about? What do you mean don't blame the church?
I don't blame the church. I blame
What? You
individual
don't?
people.
So when you have bishops that are covering up for these people, you don't blame them?
Well, they should be removed too and be.
So you do blame them then. So you blame the church.
But not. I don't blame the position of the people.
But the church consists
I
of
blame
people.
the person, right? So
But the
people-
church. So you have to blame the church.
Not the church. I blame the person. I
The
blame
church
you.
consists of people. The church is not this pie in the sky institution that's just there in your brain. It's like it's an actual institution that consists of people.
It's like if a student acts out of order in a classroom, and what they do today is they punish the whole classroom rather than punishing the individual student.
If a professor is molesting
All
children,
students are.
if a teacher is molesting children and the entire school board of education covers up for him, don't you blame the institution of education?
I blame the people who are doing.
Don't you
it.
blame the
Not
board of
board-
education though?
Not the positions that they hold. I blame the.
But we're not talking about but
individual.
nobody's making that argument. No one's saying that the position should be blamed. We're talking about the people, the leadership, what the church actually consists of, which is people.
Well, I would like to talk to you some more. Theodore, thank you for
All right.
coming up on your screen.
Okay.
Say hello to your dad for me.
I will. Have a
And everyone
all
in
right.
the chat, Happy New Year. God
Oh,
bless
Happy New Year to
And
you.
I'll see you guys.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Damn. Talk about deflection. Oh my god, dude.